Hi there, and welcome to Muzzle Geekery for the week of March 25th, 2019. As always, I am your host, Dusty Red, and with me,
Dusty White.
And this week in Geek News.
Panic at the Disco's High Hopes breaks decade-old radio record, sitting at number 1 for 15 weeks. This record was previously held by the phrase, How to Save a Life.
And Sony confirms that it will stop letting GameStop and other retailers sell PS4 download codes. Also, if you hurry now and go to elderscrolls.bethesda.net, you'll find that you can find Morrowind for free to download for this week, to mark Elder Scrolls' 25th anniversary.
And finally, Spotify buys true crime podcast studio Parcast, with such hits as Cults, Paranormal, and such other true crime hits. Bear with us this week. Is it a bit of an experiment? We recorded a LARP Q&A session on our way to an event. Stay tuned next week as we recap our adventures at Alliance South Michigan season opener.
And we're here on the road, driving out to Jackson, Michigan. I said Jacksonville. That's
south. We're going north.
North of I-80. Yay! So we are on the road for a wonderful LARP adventure. This is part 2 of the podcast of possibly 3, because I can see us doing another post or something. And yeah, so we're gonna do listener questions and a bunch of other variety of LARP specific things. Yay! So what do we want to ask first for questions? Who do we got?
So we have Twitter at, or Clay at Red Reese on Twitter. What would be your perfect event?
Like my perfect, like
what?
A good flogging and some chains and maybe a ball gag. Like
what would be your perfect LARP event? What criteria would have to be followed?
That is so vague. Like, oh my goodness, this guy's going nuts. That's vague as hell. What do you think? Are you first? I need to think for a second.
Well, didn't you pretty much have a perfect event recently? Like killing off one of your werewolves?
The entirety of the event. Yeah, I guess that'd be what I consider a perfect event. So, the event in question, I guess, would be where the weekend itself was perfectly set up to be a finisher for the weekend plotline, a weekend story. And that was where we rolled in and had a very specific goal of killing this big, bad werewolf. That was a thorn in my side. And it started with us having to find this sage in a swamp, which required some physical challenges. We had, like, these wooden planks on wheels, I think they were.
Are we talking, like, whirly ball in gym class?
Or when you lose your fingers, you get ran over or something like that. You play like crab soccer on those things.
My joints just cramp up thinking about gym class with those damn things.
Alright, parachute day was still my favorite, alright? Brought the big parachute up, you sat inside the bubble. Yeah. So, I guess long story short, as you know me and I'm winded, it was a module to go do some physical challenges, to go seek the person in the swamp. Once we talked to them, they gave us a series of tasks that were more or less repeatable for other players in the game. So we had to go and collect like this high grain alcohol that was specifically made by a race.
What am I actually looking at here? Moon juice.
No, that was a different thing. But that was anyway. So we had to go get this liquid. Then we also had to get these like moon fragments. And then the third piece was moss or something.
I remember the moss because I almost died.
Okay.
We were in the basement fighting.
Right. And so we had to gather these 3 things, and those 3 things were in themselves modules. Like to get the hooch, we had to get these grapes, which were represented by water balloons, and we had to throw the water balloons from one end of the dock to the other into a bucket, without breaking as many as possible. But even if they did break, as long as they were in the bucket, they were considered pre-squeezed or, not from concentrate. So it was cool because that we had those series of mods, and we were able to get other players to do those mods, or those modules. And what that did is it granted us more of the component that we needed to kill these were creatures, which we ended up calling moon juice, or moonberry juice, or moonshine, I think it was.
Yeah.
Moonshine. And that basically did was allow you to do half damage to all of the, like, half of their life. So basically all the were creatures became 2-shot. So we did all that, spent the whole Friday night, Saturday doing that. And then on Saturday night, split the town into 2 groups, while one group was doing the big part of the module, the other group was NPCing little were creatures. And it just, the way it was ran, the support, the positivity, it was a full story, it was a closure to a story, it was well run and very well balanced, it had some cool mechanics, even the props are really good, the final room, to keep the main werewolf from just being ambushed, because nothing survives a circle beat, to keep the main werewolf from being ambushed, they set it up to be like platforms, where if you weren't standing on this platform, you basically fell and had to climb your way out at a 10-second count. And so the were creatures were able to bounce around with some leniency of falling into the pit, whereas the players, the PCs, once they hit not a platform, they had to do a full 10 count to climb out of the pit. So it slowed the combat down for players.
Right.
So it wasn't just 15, 20 guys jumping on the
Rush
bad
the
guy.
asshole!
Yeah, just charge him and beat him into submission. So that to me, and then that wrapped up the plot line. It killed that major were creature. It was just well done in many facets, and one of the perfect weekends for me, because I had also a bigger idea of the, and I'm biased. It was my storyline. It was on my birthday weekend, so it was a lot of me-centric things, where I really got to feel like a big hero. But yeah, I'm not saying my perfect event needs me to be the hero at all times, but that was definitely a super memorable event.
I was going to say, you need it to be memorable. A good event, a perfect event is going to be memorable, and it's going to be memorable when it involves you.
But it doesn't but even if it didn't involve me, I still like to think that other people that participated in that weekend, we still joke about it, the werewolf bar mitzvah.
Yeah. Sure.
Boy becomes man, man becomes wolf. Spooky, scary. Man goes out the bottom. So what about you? What is your idea of a perfect event?
I'm kind of I have a dual mind towards it. Even break it down further for me would be, is it a perfect event that I am running? Or is it a perfect event that I am participating?
We're on a half-hour time limit here, so... So what is it? If you're running it too, what do you think is a perfect event? We want to get as many players as possible. You said memorable, it being memorable. So what is that? How would you make it memorable, or does it become memorable for you?
I think a perfect event for me is a wrap-up event. If you've done your job as a plot person, if you've done a good job as a plot person, you have to involve as many people and make that plot line important to them.
Sure.
Make it feel as if they've done something sacrificial for that plot line, or they've invested time into that plot line. So for me, a perfect event is a wrap-up of something memorable for as many people as possible.
So that could also hinge on a build-up, obviously. Because you can have a wrap-up to a plot line, but if there's not enough of a build-up for it, nobody's going to care.
Right. I couldn't say that I've had a perfect event. I've had perfect memories from several events over the course of my LARPing career. I unfortunately probably missed out on one of the most memorable events because of real life. The closing of an event, or closing of a chapter, where they lost the death of a silver dragon, or defended a town based on the corrupted bloodline of a dragon.
And that, if I'm not mistaken, also not so much ended the chapter, but it was a chapter. For those that don't know, a chapter is a LARP that takes place in a specific area, because a lot of these LARPs are owned by it's like a company, and a lot of the chapters would be, franchises of that company,
I mean, that's
basically?
exactly what they are.
So this franchise of this main game
Was closing.
wasn't even they were closing that campaign, but not closing their doors.
Right.
So they were willing to get rid of that world that they built. Like, the game was still there. They were just changing up their menu, basically.
Yeah. A good analogy.
So they were willing, though, to toss their entire menu out to, I don't want to say accommodate, but tell the players, hey, there are dire consequences if you do not succeed.
It was world ending. A world story.
It's one of the few times where you can actually threaten the world, end the world, and actually end the world, and make the players who survive be the same characters, but it would be either post-apocalyptic if they try to go back to that area, which happens sometime later, or you are just in a new town, a new city, a new kingdom. Hey, you all got on a boat and sailed away because you lose. So anyway, yeah, okay. Next question.
Next question, same person. How did the two of you discover LARP?
You go first this time.
All right. I discovered LARP in a, unfortunately, somewhat cliche fashion, but not really. I might as well have been a healer girlfriend. When I was dating someone in high school, they found LARP. They found Nero. And I was the girlfriend of this person that found the chapter, and all their friends went, and they would drive 8 hours to go play this LARP, and they loved it. I did not understand it. I didn't get the concept of it when I was the girlfriend. I made a first spell book because I was supportive, and I wanted to support the significant other's hobby.
Well, you're also skilled in calligraphy.
Yes.
So you're able to assist as a significant other by using your skills.
Right, making a phys rep for them to be able to use. Physical representation.
Yeah, a term like phys rep is a shortened word for physical representation. So you'll have a spell book, which in game is a piece of a tagged piece of paper, it's a tagged item. But then a lot of players will make a physical representation of that item. So it becomes a game occurrence, and all that stuff. I didn't mean to cut you off, but so you had skills in calligraphy to be able to assist your significant other by making a book for him.
Correct.
Okay.
So it wasn't until years later that I was still in with that group of friends. That person was no longer my significant other. I decided to go try it. And my first event was not very fun. I remember not having a good time. I unfortunately just didn't get into it. Luckily, I tried it a season later. I tried it at a different chapter or a different franchise and had a lot more fun. I believe I talked about it in the last episode where I got a costume, so it definitely helped my mindset be like, no, I am here, the immersion. I got into it. But I found LARP and was hooked after that point. So roughly found it through being a significant other of somebody that found it. What about you?
I was a D&D nerd in high school, but did not have a large enough crowd to play. I had a couple friends, neighbors and such, but played what I can. Played typical Dungeons & Dragons, mostly Forgotten Realms. Then at a high school graduation party of a friend of the D&D group, heard this 7-foot guy that sounds like a cross between Ray Romano and Kermit the Frog and a Wookiee, who was actually the chairman, or was the chairman, of the First Squared Convention, Alkali, Dan for some of those old players. He was a Nero, a New England role-playing organization. He was a Nero player for Chicago, the Chicago chapter. And he was just at a table at this party talking to some of his friends, his high school friends. And he went to a different high school than me, but again, went to the same high school as my friend. So I was supporting my friend at his party. Heard this Kermit the Frog guy talking about Dungeons and Dragons, but for real. And again, I was an awkward teenager, high schooler, and everybody else that I was hanging out with was talking about girls, it was talking about cars, and just talking about stuff that I wasn't terribly interested in. So I end up going over to his table, and he's like, yeah, I play this game. You interested? I'm like, absolutely. So you fast forward to June of 2000, and I go to my first LARP as an elf, because I did not have a rulebook yet.
I didn't even know. I thought you had always been a fox.
My first character was an elf because I did not have a rulebook, and I did not know animal creatures and animal peoples existed. But I figured humans are boring and dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a human.
Now, in a lot of rule sets, they actually become really cool because they do get, like with Dungeons and Dragons, they get a free feat or an additional feat. Depending what, like for Alliance, you get to choose like a skill, like special racial skills and stuff. So it's kind of neat to have that. Humans at Old Nero did not have any flaws, whereas some races couldn't use certain weapons and whatnot. So anyway, I was like, well, I don't want to be a human. I'm going to be an elf. So I got way too convoluted, and his name was Leolok Dragon Dance, and he was like, it was bad. It was cringeworthy, so much cringe. And I showed up with a bow and like a leather cowboy vest.
AKA, new players don't ever do this.
Yeah, there's a lot of cringy stuff you look at, and like Edge Lord, and I didn't have the only knowledge I had of a lot of LARPing and stuff like that was through like whatever books and Dragon Magazine and other stuff. I did not have the knowledge now where, again, when I LARPed, the Lord of the Rings series was still just a book or a cartoon from the 70s and 80s. Like, it wasn't...
Fantasy wasn't mainstream.
It was nowhere near... We had no Daenerys showing her boobies and getting destroyed by Khal Drogo. Sorry. But still, I was like, Jesus Christ. Anyway, this is going into explicit material. But yeah, so I just happened to hear somebody talk about it, and I was in a position where I was right out of high school and was just curious and thought it would be fun. It was fairly local because it took place on the north side of Chicago at a campsite, like basically in the Chicago zip code.
Right. Danbeard, right?
Camp Danbeard, which is right off of like Lake Street, way north. But I was like, yeah, sure, it's doable. I went. He picked me up because he had a license because I grew up in a city and didn't need a license. Like, I took the CTA everywhere. I had no need for a license, driver's license. But so he picked me up, and we went up there and got on site, and I made a character, made an elf, and then saw a couple people playing SAR, which are cat race people, playing Black Panther SAR and a Tiger SAR, and I was like, there's animal people in this game? I then got home, went on the Nero forums, made a post, and was like, hey, I didn't know there's animal peoples, I don't have a rule book. Eventually got a rule book, posted up a question about makeup, like how to apply makeup, how to do it, I want to play a fox. Got a response from someone in Texas on how to do it, and for the better part of 10 years, she became one of my best friends. And that's, she plays a female fox, well, she used to, played a female fox named Lady Tia out in Texas, and actually traveled a bit on the East Coast a bit, and on the southeast side. So, yeah, that's how I got into it. I just kind of heard somebody talking about it and went with the mentality of, what do I have to lose?
Right.
At that point, I had played played Vampire the Masquerade a couple times.
Gateway LARP.
Had my Gateway LARP, so I was familiar with the concepts of LARPing and felt safe in that community of it's a bunch of nerds and they're willing to just go out and just be nerds. So I went and said, what do I got to lose?
And I feel like I had kind of a similar mindset too, because I had, by that point that those people I was friends with played, I would sit in on their D&D night sessions and stuff like that. So I kind of got this feeling of, oh, I could do this for real. And I was also a drama kid. So getting up and talking and being improvish and all stuff like that was very natural to me.
Sure.
All right, next question. This
Same.
Nope, different
Okay.
person.
Who we got?
This is from Chad Schaefer via Gmail.
Oh, Chad is a owner, one of the co-owners of the Alliance South Michigan event, which is a chapter, which is where we're going right now.
Pre-game ritual that gets you into character, like a playlist you listen to or a phrase you would say. I went first.
Okay.
Your turn.
Well, it depends on where you go and what you're doing. I mean, it may sound cheesy, but we have multiple characters, right?
Yep.
I've got 2 versions of my fox, and I also play a cheetah, who is definitely more stoic warrior type. So, as dumb as it sounds, having an idea of who I'm going to play is the first step.
Right.
It sounds dumb, but if I go, hey, I'm going to play, for like this weekend, I am playing Dusty, Red Rapscallion, Dusty Red, the fox, bard, / prankster, / scout. That's the first step of going, okay, I need my mentality to go in that field now. I need to do that. So, some of the things I do is I will listen to certain music that fit that character. I know for my cheetah, my warrior, Haraka, who I totally Disney named, because Haraka in Swahili means fast, and he's a cheetah, and I am so original. I listen to Simba. That's an explicit story. So, for Haraka, I actually listen to a lot of Tool and Mudvayne and Perfect Circle, a lot of Maynard type stuff. I like his voice. It's very, so a lot of hard rock, a lot of metal even. Like, I don't want to say metal, straight up metal, but that vein of Rage Against the Machine, something with a good beat to it, because I have that in my head of something you would march to, something you would get, like, music for a background for a fight in a movie or something.
Okay.
Because he's a warrior.
So, like,
mentality.
battle cry,
Not
stuff
even battle
like that.
cry. Like, he is just a bloodthirsty. If you're watching a AAA movie and dude like just flips out of the shadows and just starts murdering people, and you got like, think of like the movie 300,
Okay.
where like that crazy battle music's playing in the background. That rolls in my head as Raka, because that's the kind of character he is. He is a soldier. He is a warrior. He's a fighter. He is kind of one-dimensional in the sense of he's very streamlined. This is what I'm going to do, and this is how I do it. Red, I will definitely listen to a variety of stuff and a variety of music that is a little bit more bouncy, a little bit more playful, and like, Greatest Showman's still one of my favorite soundtracks to listen to, getting into that mentality. Some rituals, I'll go through my costume.
Right.
Or the character I'm going to play. So I'll go through my costume. I will go through... Sorry about that. Guy didn't want to let me move. I will go through my costume. I will polish up or clean up leather. I will make sure all my costume pieces are good. I'll make sure my weapons are safe. I'll go through all those steps and almost treat it as if I am that character preparing for a weekend of running out there and getting into fights and stuff. So it starts not just on Friday night, but it does allow me to do headcanon. I'm bored at work sometimes, and I'll dream up scenarios and stories or reflect back into favorite things of, this is a good event, or what would make this character do this, or, kind of reaffirm yourself of, while the characters are improv at the end of the day, there's still a guideline that you want to do. And one of the things I usually do is try to pick 3 merits and 3 flaws.
That's another topic.
Oh, okay. then before I go on that, your turn. How do you get
way
into
to segue into completely different territory.
You get
Okay.
How do you get into
Like Red, I have multiple characters I play. I have a little easier of a time than maybe other people do because my 2 main characters, Dusty White is a paladin type elf.
Paladins are lawful good, you realize that.
Okay, chaotic. Neutral
Ranger.
good.
You're more Ranger.
Okay. Alright, so Ranger, elf, treekin like thing that I play as Dusty White. My secondary character is a white fox and is everything that Dusty White isn't.
You are shady.
I'm shady, indiscriminate, murder hobo. You got enough gold to hire me? Let's go. I don't care. Don't ask questions. Not a leader. I'll get shit done. But I don't care at the end of the day. So I have two very drastically different characters there. So getting it ready, again, kind of depends on who I'm playing. Then I have Nyota in Alliance that is a Asar, and she's a lot like Haraka, where we're one goal-minded, we fight as a group, we kill as a group, we march as a group, we're just very blindsided or tunnel vision when it comes to playing that group together. So my ritual does depend on who I'm playing. For Dusty, it would be a lot of getting ready, making sure I have my notes in order, making sure I've gone over planning for other people what they may need. I've talked about it this last podcast that I am a leader of a group. So I have to make sure my group is outfitted for whatever they need to get done. We do some organization about what we are planning on accomplishing. Do we have the things that we need in order to accomplish those goals? It's very more logistic and
at that point,
structured.
At that point, you're taking care of others, which goes into that leadership mentality of, whereas again, using Sai as the counterpoint, you just roll in with a duffel bag, you're like, I'm here, bitches!
Right. And I just need a sword and a shield and I'm good to go. So music for me was always more of a ritual I would do before we would go run an event. Since I was on plot and was head of plot for about 5 years of a chapter in the Midwest, Nero Highborn, we had a very specific playlist that we would play and kind of like rock out to, or just kind of like get your rhythm up, get your thought process going, and we knew we would hit the right part of our soundtrack or our playlist when a very specific song came on by Fort Minor, and I can't think of the 100%, something like that.
Oh, Concentration Will.
Yeah.
Mom Spaghetti. I don't know, something like that.
So we knew when we hit that, and we usually hit what was the road? The actual road and not the name we came up with.
We usually call it Some Damn Road.
Yeah.
But it was Sudam Road, or Sudam Road.
And
No, that was for Chicago, Twiat Road.
Twiat Road,
It was TWIAT Road, but we always called it Twat Road. This is getting flagged for explicit content. But yeah, no, it's Twat Road. It was Twiat Road.
We knew by
and
the
Some Damn
time
Road.
we knew by the time we hit Twiat Road that song was going, and we were being prepared, and we were ready to go start our night.
If I could piggyback, did you find it easier, or do you find it easier, or is it just as difficult to get into that mentality compared to a character mentality? Because at least with a character mentality, it's your creation, I guess the NPCs are all your creations too, but a character mentality, you are that character for the whole weekend, so you can anticipate those reactions, those personalities. How easy or how difficult is it? Because I was on plot as well for Old Midwest, but I wasn't like an important plot piece. I was the guy that went, give me some stats, give me some treasure, give me a stick, I got things to do. Like I was
Monster
entertainer.
Camp.
I was Monster Camp. I was an entertainer. I had no desire to write too many. I ran a couple modules, but I was not there
You weren't
for that.
coming up with a plot line.
No.
You were filling a role.
Right. So, do you have any? Is it more difficult or easier or whatnot when you know you're going to run the event and you're not going to be these characters the entire weekend? You have to fly by the seat of your pants a little bit more. How was that for you? How was that process of going from one character, swapping out, and then going into another?
For me, it was super easy. Again, with the background of being in drama and being improvising and portraying a story, plotting was a lot, essentially the same thing.
Okay.
I had an idea. I would go. We would have a plot line. We'd have plot meetings. A lot of chapters do have weekly meetings, if not monthly meetings, if not weekly meetings, where they talk about, okay, what beats do we want to hit as we're running this season's events. So this first season, this first event, we'd run this, and the second event we're going to run this, and as the time goes, you flesh more of your story out. And obviously you don't want, it's just like any DM, if you've ever been a dungeon master, you can't be like, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this and this, because you're not leaving any room for your players to affect your world.
You're not going to get railroaded, basically.
Right, and then you're left going, well, I didn't expect them to go do that. Well, now I have nothing, I have nothing planned.
We've done that a few times with people, too.
It's called, rift to end boss, or, like, escalate to end boss.
Very nice.
Right, exactly. Totally legit. So for me, it wasn't really hard jumping and being like, okay, I had plot people, or I had ideas of, in this world that we've now written and we are fleshing out and writing as we go, because you have to do that as well. I have these characters, and kind of to piggyback off of what you were saying before, to create those characters, I would go, okay, 3 flaws, three goals, 3 flaws, something that the PCs could, or player characters could pick up on. I had one character that...
will this roll into our next question? Do we want to do that? And just
What was the next question?
You said it was segueing into...
your question of how did you create your character?
Okay, so we'll tie this. So who asked that to
I'm asking.
Okay, so that was a question you came
Yes.
Okay, so what is that question then?
How did you come up with some of your background of Dusty?
Okay, so let's start with you and ask that question. So we'll spin from your NPCs to then your characters.
So for one of my more memorable NPCs at Highborn, I created a Master Vizier, and she was this very high magic mage. And in the world we created, she was basically the kingdom's high mage. And
the Grand Wizard.
The Grand Wizard. The Grand Vizier.
Right. Well, I don't want to say Grand Wizard. That takes a completely different kind. To any of you Southern listeners, we don't mean that kind of Grand Wizard. Anyway.
I had a very distinct hat that looked like I had the child of a clown, and had stitched them all together. And I would, you would see this person and completely write them off as, wow, this person is dumb. But I had this position, and people were invested in finding out, okay, what does this person know? How do they have this position? Why are they important? Well, the secret of it was when she was out of her chambers, or out of her tower, there was a screw loose. There was something not so right. But the PCs would get involved and find out and start learning from her, and they would see the complete opposite when she was in the tower. And they would get visions or get ideas of, okay, there's more here. And that's part of being a good NPC, is giving the players an opportunity to go, okay, why do I want to be invested in this person, or getting to know this character?
You make them real.
Yes. So that is a lot like of how you would create your own character. Dusty White was created very open book style. I didn't have a lot of history for her. Her history was very simple and not a lot to it, which kind of is opposite of what you created with your creation of Dusty Red. I didn't go in with an idea of who she was. She was formed, Dusty White was formulated by the events and memories she has from actually adventuring.
So then I will pose a piggyback question before I go into that. The old comment of your first character is you.
Oh,
Does that, by that, for listeners who are new to LARP, generally speaking, the time you make your first character, the first time you make a character, you are, again, this goes back to the last podcast as well, you become so focused on learning the game and the rules in the world that it almost becomes a default default or a safety position to play a character that is akin to who you really are, or an idea of who you want to be, or something that's really you. Like, at the core, it's you in that setting, or you in that timeline, or you in that wherever it is. Because it's an easy shoe to put on when you don't have to overly think about the character. Example of Haraka, I have to think about the character a little bit more, because I will, as a default, I default to a smart-ass type personality.
Yes, you do.
Which goes to my fox being a smartass. Whereas Haraka, I don't play him as a smartass, so I have to remember that when I am playing him, I need to focus on the character. But because I know the rules of the game enough, I don't have to think or bog myself down with focusing on the rules. I could focus on the character and the personality. Whereas with Dusty, my Dusty Red, I'm going to say it more times, he is definitely a part of me that was a smart aleck and a smart ass. So
how did you go about extenuating some of your own characteristics?
Well, as you said, you've had Dusty White that kind of came about. I mean, that goes back to the question I was asking. Like, does Dusty White
Dusty White definitely comes off more to me being somebody that does take a leadership role when needed. It just so happens in type of LARP that we play, there's a void of leadership. A void of leadership, and not because nobody can do it. It's just it's hard to put your neck out there and go, we are doing this. Could completely fail. I will take the responsibility on myself of, yep, this was my idea. Yes, this failed. This is why it failed. I didn't go in with the correct information.
We're gonna have to do a web or something, because that then makes me think of, do you think it is difficult to be a leader? Now we're definitely deviating a bit, but do you think it is difficult to be a leader in a game that has an emphasis on everybody's the hero?
Yes. Hands down, 100% yes.
You're trying to lead, like, if you want to take a leadership role, that's generally good for most games and most situations, because you're going to have leadership characters. However, when you're playing a game where everybody's on the same page or same capability of being the superhero, then unless you're the League of, like, even the League of Justice, like, Aquaman's Batman's bitch at the end of the day, and like everybody basically Batman's bitch, and like Aquaman's not coming up like, I have a great idea. Yeah, sit down, Steve. Like, we done talking to Flipper. Like, so do you see with some games where everybody is the hero, everybody is the quintessential.
The trick to any good leader is to knowing how to delegate.
Okay.
So when you are a good leader in a game like Nero or Alliance, it is becoming a leader and being able to delegate and go, no, I don't know a lot about this one particular thing this NPC is asking me, or this player is asking me. But you know what? I know somebody who is. Go talk to so-and-so.
So it's identifying strengths and weaknesses of other people.
Because, that's management. That's
sure.
Delegation. It is being able to use your resources, and your resources are other players sometimes.
You gotta remember, real life jobs, you deal with all that stuff. You deal with people that... I deal with electronics and parts. I don't deal with people. So honestly, jokes aside, my people management is not good, because I don't manage and deal with people on a real life level. I do work with technology. I work with, electricity, and I do not have a lot of interpersonal and business relationships with people, because it's not essential to my career. So there is something that I will easily admit is a bit of a void, whereas someone like you that deals with people on a regular basis, be it through cubicles, through phone calls, through even your previous job where you had to basically finagle and manage people.
Right.
It becomes a skill that you're able to take from real life and bring to the game, correct?
Correct. So to circle
back
around,
questions.
you created Dusty using what
I
type of...
started Dusty, and if we're going gray muzzle here, I started the concept of Dusty back when I was on America Online in the old chat rooms. For anybody who remembers Raiden and the Red Dragon Inn chat rooms, I wanted to play a guitar and was learning how to play a guitar, and so took character traits and personalities and made a character to be a bard-like character. However, at the same time, I was really getting invested into Star Fox games and anything Fox related, and just kind of was like, I'm going to make a Fox bard who's a smartass. And because it's all text-based, I was able to impart a lot of myself and a lot of my smarm and sarcastic entity into that character. So when it came to LARPing and bringing that character to life, all I had to do was just be kind of what I wanted to be and wasn't. Again, I went to an all-boys Catholic high school. I was kind of grew up in a conservative family and did not have an outlet of creativity like that. So when it came down to, hey, you're going to be a jovial, smartass, trickster fox type character, I glommed on and wrote it. And as much as I imparted that character to become more real, as I played that character, things I've learned from him became me in real life as well. I've adopted traits of Dusty that is very clearly a Dusty thing. That you guys leave a comment on it of that is something Dusty would say, but I will say it in real life because there's that wall broke down a little bit, that fourth wall, so to speak, between character and player. Where it's not a stretch for me sometimes, and obviously I'll ham it up and be more like a character. And I guess you could poke and go, is that bad role playing? Do you consider that a bad role player if they play something that's so either A, in their wheelhouse, or B, is just natural to them? Like, am I a bad role player for playing Dusty the way I do because it is so much like me?
No, but I've also, but that's only because I've seen you be somebody different, like Haraka and NPCs, and not fall back on that easy laurel or whatever, easy characteristic of you.
Sure. To
see that you're not a bad role player.
And I guess I bring that up just because for other new players that are potentially out there, ultimately you can not fall into, but you can play a version of yourself and be okay with it. Like, I guess a lot of people have a tendency of thinking that being a character is like going to the Renaissance Fair, where you're my lord, and using the vernacular and the attitude and overly hammed up performance, rather than just, hey, I'm dude, and I'm a fighter, and this is what I do, and build a character. Because a lot of times you can also allow the game itself to shape the character,
which is what I did.
You allow the environment to shape your decision. You allow the environment to, I know for some games, like, there's still the big old argument of what color dragon is a good dragon. Is there such thing as a good dragon? Like, you go D&D and be like, oh, copper dragons are clearly good. You show up in another game thinking that copper dragons are good dragons, and then one just stomps your face because its idea of good is different from yours.
Right.
So I guess for our listeners, that's more of a rhetorical question in a sense of, you could lean or rest on something that's more comfortable and like, hey, I'm a LARPer, I'm a this, I'm a that, and I'm playing a character akin to my normal personality. But as long as you're not breaking the anachronistic of, talking about the Blackhawks or the Red Wings, or you're talking about football or other things that are part of that game, but you just keep the character mentality of, like, keep your mentality, but put it in that time period, in that era, you should be okay, as long as you leave yourself room to grow.
Okay. So let's look at another one of our questions from another co-owner of SOMI, Southern Michigan Alliance, Chris Ingerbritson.
You're gonna stutter that name all the time.
We know him as Inger. Via Facebook. What's your favorite type of LARP story? How has LARP affected your personal relationship with your friends, positively or negatively?
That is 2 questions. So, what's the first question? What's your favorite LARP story?
Yeah, what's your favorite type of LARP story?
Type of LARP story. Well, let's keep things a little bit punchy because this is going to be a little bit longer episode, I feel. But favorite type of LARP story? I like LARP stories that. I mean, I'm a sucker for suspense and comedy. So I like a funny story where somebody kind of good-naturedly makes a goof, or like some of the stories that we do for otherworldly stories for some of the fur conventions. Nobody genuinely has much interest in the story when they talk about how much of a badass they are. I know some people personally that will sit there and toot their own horn and talk about how good they are and how high level they are and how many skills they have, and it's not boring. It's not an entertaining story. It's throwing out stats. Nobody cares about the jargon in that result. A lot of my favorite stories are stories that are ones that that transcend games, that are relatable even in real life, of you did something goofy or something silly or something stupid, and is a good-natured lesson that obviously you don't want to make somebody embarrassed. You don't want to make fun of them because of an honest mistake. But as long as you get a laugh out of it, or it's a communal lesson learned of like, hey, that was pretty funny. Remember that time when one of our friends tried to heal a dead deer in the woods?
Right.
Like, wait, what? Like, yeah, he didn't see. It was pitch black. He went to go try to heal because he thought it was a body. He thought it was a person. And when he got a little light and saw that it was just a dead deer in the woods, like, that's pretty fun. At the time, it was absolutely horrendous.
Right.
But it's funny to look back on. So stories like that I'm a big fan of. How about you?
I would say the same thing. Like, just stories that somebody can relate to, and it's not about how outsmart, like, how big your character card is, or how big or powerful the monster you beat was. It's more about the actual story behind it, of how you and a group of these people found themselves out in the middle of the woods or down in the middle of a cave fighting this thing. You have some type of something draws you to that type of story. So it's either love gone wrong, or a familiar story like brother versus brother, or something like that. Again, a good plot person writes NPCs that get you invested in their story. Because a lot of the time, the world exists while we're not there as players. It's a persistent world. It's a persistent world. There's weekends. They're called market fairs. Those are the weekend events that the PCs or the adventurers are in the world playing. But the world exists and is persistent without those players always having to be there. So if these NPCs or these non-player characters can build a personality to get you invested and be like, I wonder what this person would do if we were doing this, or I wonder what the Vizier would be doing, or I wonder what Dame Hallowell would be doing.
Jeez, bringing out that old name.
Or the Lord of Worms, or something that gets you invested in that person's story. Those are my types of favorite LARP stories, is something that non-player character, that PC, that monster, got you invested in their story.
Sure. No, 100%. Like, and I guess it's hard to specifically nail what type. Interpersonal, I guess, is the type.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I like to tell stories, and I do not like to tell stories that are nothing more than bragging, or telling stories that are nothing more than jargon and stats, or stories that make fun of others, punching down, so to speak. I do enjoy stories that will punch at oneself. I make fun of myself as much as I can, because if you can't laugh at yourself, who the hell can you laugh at?
Right.
I do like to tell stories about other people's moments of greatness. I enjoy, for one of the Nero events last year, 2 years ago, there was a new player who goes by Bert Smirgleton.
Bert Smirgleton.
He was a brand new player, but he came up to me and was like, hey, look, I know I'm still new to adventuring. It's a nice way of saying I'm still new to the game. I'm still new at adventuring, but I need to figure out a way how to be more useful, because he's low level, so you got a certain amount of spells, a certain amount of abilities, and I was able to point him to be like, hey, I need you to just keep an eye on people, keep an eye in the woods. If you see something moving, call it out. Just use your awareness. That is not a build-bought skill, a game-bought skill.
It's not one-time expendable.
Yeah, it is a pay attention, let me know. And he was all on it. Comes up to me, he's like, I think somebody disappeared in the woods. And I go out there, and there was one of our friends that got dropped and dragged off in the woods. So, having people like that are, and to me, like, that's still a story I'll tell, obviously, in more detail than rather here on the podcast, or I could tell in a future episode, that, yeah, he used skills that were real-life skills and not just game skills and made-up skills and all this other stuff, but he used actual awareness and actual communication skills and was able to make himself a hero, being second, third level, by using just acknowledging
common sense.
Yeah, using common sense, but acknowledging the fact that, okay, I'm small, how else can I be of assistance? And yeah, it's still one of my favorite things of this guy. I'm just like, this guy's brand new and he's willing to learn, which is also big for new LARPers, we talked about this, like stepping outside and being willing to learn, being willing to help, and understanding that, especially nowadays, a lot of LARPs are team-based games. When I was first coming up, it was a little bit more player versus player heavy, and it was a little bit more, I guess, bullying in a sense. In some of the old games, there was some bullying involved, in the sense of players robbing and stealing from other players and stuff, and a lot of that is toned down, and it's become more players versus the environment. There's still friction every now and then between groups, which is good. You want to have some conflict, but you never really want to have it to a point where you have players murdering each other because they're bored.
Right.
Because
that's bad plotting.
Or because the noble structure or noble system in play can't handle or is afraid to handle a bad player being toxic.
All right, so we'll break down that second part of that question.
Interpersonal relationships.
How has LARP affected your personal relationships with your friends positively or negatively?
I mean, really, really short. I've made some of my best friends for life through LARPing. Reverse side of that coin, I've made some of the worst enemies and an ex-wife along the way through LARPing. So, when you it's like any hobby, and we kind of talked separately off mic about a topic similar to this of any hobby or any interest that you have in, you're going to meet people that are also interested in that hobby. If I wasn't LARPing, I would be playing baseball, or I'd be bowling, I'm not a bowler, I'm saying you.
Right,
You'd
right.
be a bowler.
You meet things with common hobbies.
So if I was hitting up I'm trying to think of what my hobbies were outside of that. I mean, I'm a disc golfer, so I would go disc golfing more often and probably make other disc golf friends and be involved in that. So I think there's a level of vulnerability that you get from LARPing that you don't show through other stuff as much, maybe, because obviously when you're LARPing, you're either, excuse me, I got hiccups now. You're putting yourself into a character, or you're putting versions of yourself into different characters. It could be confusing making friends sometimes, because some people will look at a character and think that person is that character, when in real life they could be not that good of a person, or they could be somebody different. You could run into somebody who you think is a sneaky thief and a rogue and a shiesty person, and then find out that it's a character. Like, they're just playing, and they're actually really cool people. They're really nice.
Well, we've had that problem with our SAR, where we come in and we're playing a little bit standoffish.
We're very standoffish.
We don't have anything to do with the town. We prowl the woods.
We sleep away from other players. We find spots in the woods to stay away. We are very standoffish characters, and we don't care about other players. There's a body on the ground, we'll walk over it. Like, we are out for ourselves. We are mercenaries. We are this. But you meet up with us and afters or beforehand, and we will support your chapter. We will hang with you. We will talk. We will do what we can to make the game better. And we'll go to people's weddings and random parties that we're invited. Like, we will be friendly with people. We have no problem with that. But once it's 3, 2, 1, lay on, these characters come out there, and we could easily be mistaken
as assholes.
As standoffish, as these guys are no cool. They're not cool.
They're not fun.
They're intimidating, and in some people's cases, a new player could see us and actually be frightened off because they don't realize that it's pretend. Like,
right.
There is that level, unfortunately, and it does exist, of, they're just playing. Like, yeah, they're not really jerks like this. So
we call that bleed.
Yeah, there's a bleed.
There's some bleed. For me, my life would not exist. I would not be.
Well, you'd still be alive.
Well, okay. You're right. I would not have the life I lead on a day-to-day basis if it was not for LARP. And I say that because
your fiance.
My fiance I met at LARP. My roommates met at LARP. My co-host met at LARP, and even to the fact of my boss is a person that played a long time ago with some of the older players that I play with now, and he knows LARP. Like, he was a head of plot for several years.
Yep.
His wife, he met LARPing. Hi Becky. So my life would be 100% different if it wasn't for LARPing. I've met some of the best people that I know, people that are successful in their lives and are, have children now, and getting to see them grow up in the community, and it boggles my mind when I step back and go, I probably would have never have left Springfield. I would have lived in Springfield. I would have never moved to Chicago.
Fair.
If it was not for LARP and finding people that I just got along with and enjoyed spending time outside of the game with.
So we could do we'll do a little, we're definitely going over an hour, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think you would be doing if you weren't LARPing? Like, if you weren't in LARP, what would we kind of joked about this before? What do you think you would be? Or where, or doing what?
I would be living in Springfield, probably, I wouldn't say married, but probably in some type of relationship with somebody from Springfield, probably somebody I went to high school with.
Small town, high school sweethearts.
Right. It would have been very simple. It'd probably be very similar to what I have now, just without the LARP, but it would be in Springfield.
Fair. I, as much as you say it'd be similar to there, I think, and not to rag on Springfield, like, those small towns are great now. Like, I'm yay for small towns, but there's definitely a lot of life lessons that aren't learned when you're in a small town.
Right.
Whereas you've definitely, through LARPing, you've traveled to a variety of cities.
Oh, I've LARPed in, 6 or 7 states by now?
Yep. You LARPed in a cave, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Tennessee.
In Tennessee. So, sorry, we're coming by a truck, and obviously our podcast picking all that up. Breaker 19, this is a convoy. Speaking of Springfield. So, we'll do a couple more questions. How many we got?
We can kind of segue into one of the questions that we have. What was the worst in-game loss you ever experienced? And that again was by Chad.
What is one of the worst in-game loss? You want to start, or if you can think of one off the
Oh,
off the
I
top?
have one.
Oh, then because you got to see these questions before I did.
Got it.
My brain is focused a little bit on the highway, but
so becoming Dusty and who she was originally, I followed, and still do, but followed a very specific kind of magic. It was nature magic. And it was kind of a newer, the rule side of it was a different school of magic. It was something that was being tested. The chapter owner that was running it had a big heart for it because it was something he had written. I ended up kind of stumbling on it and becoming kind of the person that brought it to the chapter. Or used it first. Or
it was like a local playtest for a different style of magic.
Correct.
Okay.
But it came from being the protector of a baby or a small green dragon, and she was the nature dragon, and this nature dragon's name was Calisandra, and she was played by one of my friends later on, and she was just cute and fun and playful. My roommate, she ended up being part of that nature protector part and things like that. So when the fall of Veros, which was my character's hometown where she grew up, and as I talked about earlier, it was the ending of that chapter, ending of that franchise. They did a fall of Veros where all the dragons basically died. I later found out that my green dragon did not die. She went and stayed with her uncle, who happened to be the a lich dragon.
Oh, Dracolich.
Dragonlich.
Oh,
Dracolich.
Dracolich are fine. Okay. So she went with Uncle Dracolich.
And lives on the plane of permanent death. She's not dead, but she lives with her uncle on the plane of permanent death. My biggest in-game loss was they tried to carry that plotline over into a different chapter, and it just didn't really carry well, and I had already kind of said, okay, that chapter has passed.
Is it like Burger King trying to make the McRib?
Yeah, kind of. It just wasn't going. I didn't want my memory of that plot line to be tainted, so I kind of, on an out-of-game way, was just like, okay, no, that's a chapter that is closed in my life, but it was a big part of how my character was formed and who she became, because she was that protector of that dragon. So my biggest in-game loss was when I finally essentially laid to rest what I had left of that chapter of that character.
Okay.
I had a sword that I'd made into. When you make magic items in our game, you can name them.
Right.
So I had a sword that was made, and it was Calisandra's spirit.
Okay.
And when that magic item started to no longer be magical and was starting to be turning to dust, I did a small ceremony to...
When the expiration date on the item, because it's every couple years or so, magic items that expire. It's nothing more than just a way to balance in-game economy.
Yes.
So far, again, for our new listeners or for anybody who's new to LARPing, it's nothing more than a mechanic just to maintain an economical balance in the game. Otherwise, you just have magic items living forever, and it'd be no reason to
spend
do
money.
Things. Right. The coin gets... If anybody's played WoW or any MMO, you look and you go, wow, cool, coins means nothing. Yeah. So, anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
Understands. Nobody knows what dust is and stuff. So.
Right. So I did basically a ritual by myself, or not even a ritual, just a laying to rest of that sword.
Closing that part of your life.
Yeah. So that was probably my biggest in-game loss, was putting away those memories. It's like almost childhood memories.
Sure.
Like putting away the diary of the preteen Dusty White and moving forward and seeing what else out there in the world was there for her to do or pursue. What about yours?
I mean, there's a good number of stuff, but I think the one that still sticks out with me is early in my gaming career. I started to play, and there were a couple at the time, and they took me under their wing when I first started playing. The female player was Naya, Julie. She played Naya, and so I was a new player. I wasn't prepared for cold, Chicago winters, and so she sewed me a mantle. Aww. And she made sure that I had, her cabin had hot soup and stuff, and her husband... She mothered you. She mothered me, and her husband played a character named Ashudo Takata. And eventually he ended up permanently dying. His character was killed off in a final, big battle type thing. And the thing is he ended up taking me under his wing before he died. So I'm a new player, and he's giving me jobs to do, and so I'm playing with this squad, and I'm following him, and he's giving me directions on what I need to do. And he very early mentored me and started teaching me how to play and how to do things and just become a better player. but because the style of character he played, that was he played I think he started off as a dark elf, but then became a Beata, which is like a weird. It's hard to describe what it is. They're bird-like traits where they got feathers and stuff, but they're
mental.
They have mental. Well, yeah, they're mental. They're crazy. They've got some mental powers, but they're very hard to describe. I don't know a way to do it. Think of barbarians with more tact and grace, and yeah, whatever. Long story short, though, he had the mentality of like very Japanese culture type mentality of honor, show respect, and meditate and train and do this. And so he got me to do that a bit. And so he kind of became like an in-game type father figure. Well, he eventually permed, and that became a very big what do I do moment for me.
Is that where the pillow came from?
That's where my first perm pillow.
Okay.
Is when he ended up permanently dying, I got the pillow from the female fox I talked about, Tia. That's an inside joke for another time. But when I had that pillow, I ended up going to a PetSmart and creating a dog bone tag with his name on there, and the pillow eventually became known as the Perm Pillow, short for Permanent Death Pillow. And so all of the characters that my fox has known or had some sort of impact on him over the years and eventually died had their names engraved onto a dog tag and sewn onto my pillow. So I have a pillow full of names of people who played these characters that have died over the years. Oddly enough, and it's almost embarrassing, another big moment that kind of ties into that is going back to like father type figures. Trust me, I know who my dad is. I have a good relationship with them. It sounds very like I have daddy issues.
Dusty Red's got daddy issues.
Yeah. But when one of the members of the OEF, Zane Alvera, who is played by Travis, one of the co-owners of Alliance South Michigan, he plays Zane, who is a werebear, very chieftain type mentality, and I gravitated towards that as well. He's got a very father figure type way he plays. He's a good storyteller. Travis himself can be long-winded at times, and so can I. But the way he played Zane, the way he played, especially now that he's gotten a little bit older. Happy belated birthday.
Yes.
Okay, never mind.
What?
You say happy birthday.
I said yes.
You
happy
said yes.
Birthday.
Happy birthday. Yes.
Stoic. I was going for stoic. Thanks for ruining it.
It's The Office. It is your birthday.
Here is your cake.
Here is your cake. So, but he played that kind of father figure and stuff. So, but he's also, because he was very familiar with were creatures and stuff, it was also something for me to learn off of. And it's still something I kind of model to this day of like were creatures and their storylines and the way he ran were stuff, where it's not a joke. It's not playing around. It's very serious business. It is very serious. You split between good were creatures and bad were creatures, and ones that are hunters and ones that suffer from the curse. And it's not just, it's all not PVC leather and chasing vampires. It's, oh, Kate Beckinsale, I love you. Anyway, so, shut up. So it's just that kind of stuff. So a lot of those characters that have that kind of effect of you learn something from them and then they go away, I think really kind of tugs at everybody. I'm sure you've got a character that was teaching you and did something and then ended up leaving or stopped playing, and you're just looking like, but more. Yeah. Okay. Maybe it's just little old Dusty and his father issues. Love you, Dad, if you're listening.
I think that's a good place to stop. We have a couple other questions that we could probably
do for part 3 on the way home from the event.
I mean, we can do a post-event wrap-up.
I could do it. I mean, yeah, you know what? We'll do a special cut or something on a Thursday or Friday or I don't know. I'm not editing these, so I'm gonna apologize for if there's background noises.
Edit that out.
I am not gonna run through the editor. I'm just gonna throw this up and just be like, deuces. It's gonna be a mess. I will.
Lots of ums.
Yeah, we definitely ums and uhs it, and who knows what the audio is gonna sound like coming from the car and everything else. But hey, I need to get gas soon anyway, and we are almost on site. So yeah, maybe on the way home we'll do a little wrap up and talk about the weekend and share some stories. And hey, A big thank you to everybody that's given us feedback and questions. Really, we are super thankful to hear
Absolutely.
all these questions and feedback. And
Keep them coming.
Yeah, keep the feedback too. Like, we want to know if we're messing up, or if there's things you want to hear more of, or things that you guys are interested in. Let's make this happen. Make this stuff grow, man. I love it. So I guess for here, I am Dusty Red, but with me in the co-pilot,
Dusty White.
and we will bid you a bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Grey Muzzle Geekery with Dusty Red and Dusty White. You can send your questions and comments to us at greymuzzlegeekery@gmail.com or find us on Twitter at greymuzzlegeek. We can be found on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and Buzzsprout. A special thank you to Pepper Coyote for our intro theme, and if you like what you heard, find more of his stuff on Spotify, Patreon, or purchase it directly from his Bandcamp page.